When a band is a household name just because of their music over the years, it instantly demands a certain amount of respect. But even bands of the Big Four release bad albums every now and then. And sometimes they're so bad they collectively cause everyone to facepalm so hard they give themselves a concussion. But when that album is so bad it makes us question if the band was really that good at all, we should be regretting the past. Back in the early 1980s, a group named Metallica was forming for some boys in a garage, and a monumental career was at their doorstep. However, for one member of the band, it would be short-lived, as guitarist Dave Mustaine was dismissed and sent packing. This wouldn't be the end for Mustaine in his music career, however, as shortly after he started his own legendary band with bassist David Ellefson in the form of Megadeth. Along with Metallica, Megadeth might be one of the most well-known names in metal, selling over 50 million albums worldwide, multiple platinum-selling albums, and 11 Grammy nominations over their 30-plus year tenure. However, the road to success will always have setbacks, and when it comes to Megadeth, they have had their share of problems. Drug use, members leaving, lawsuits between band members, music videos being banned, crazy blonde hair. It's safe to say that Megadeth has seen it all. While many people still compliment Megadeth for what they've done over the past few decades, there have been some missteps. And metal fans the world over agree that Risk, their 8th full album, was the biggest facepalm of all. Released on August 31st, 1999, this album title really meant more than what the band intended with this album being Megadeth's venture into alternative rock radio. Enough with the 8 minutes of shredding and condemnation of politics and war, it was time to take a chance and make it big on radio play like another certain band did and achieved great success with. After 15 years, it's perfectly understandable for a band to want to try something different, especially when it's worked for so many other bands before. But there's a problem with Risk. It's boring. Mind-numbingly boring. When you think about Megadeth, you think about certain solos, album covers, one-line lyrics about war, and even the mascot, Vic Rattlehead. What most people don't think about is slow progressions, embarrassing writing, groaning, and whatever the heck the song Crush It is. For the longtime fans, this Risk was an enormous letdown of massive proportions. Can you imagine the poor suckers who bought this album in 1999 and expected something fast and brutal? And the worst part? This was the first Megadeth album I had ever heard. It's like trying jelly beans for the first time, but the first one you ever get is one of those bad-flavored Bean Boozled ones that makes you throw up. I think just about everyone has had that experience of getting introduced to a band with, not their best work, and it can take a while to understand that there was better past or even future material out there from said group. But in this particular case, why is Risk so bad and so boring? Why is this particular album Megadeth's Voldemort level of album that shall not be named? Well, let's go track by track and see why this risk wasn't one worth taking. Keep in mind I might fall asleep during the playing of some of these. If it happens to you too, I understand. Okay, this track starts off kind of interesting, but it does not last. And I'd also like to point out that the first track on the album is called Insomnia. Kind of like saying, if you have this problem, then this is the album for you. This doesn't feel like Megadeth at all. This doesn't even feel like Dave Mustaine was a part of it. I actually think the electric violin is a nice effect and something intriguing for a rock or metal song, but this song just doesn't cut it overall. Lyrically, there is really nothing to get behind. I mean at all. Insomnia isn't exactly rewriting Hamlet. The guitar riffs sound pretty strong for a rock track, but it does not save Mustaine's almost whisper-like song title singing, and the track gets repetitive very fast. It may interest you to know that this song was one of 3 radio singles from the album. Yeah, they played this on the radio. Can't even imagine how many car crashes it caused from listeners falling asleep at the wheel. To be honest, the song isn't flat out terrible. It does pick up at the end. However, the track is one of the highlights. I mean, this is the best foot forward for the album, and the lyric writing that has Mustaine repeating Insomnia, it can be a bit foreboding of what to expect. Insomnia definitely feels like Megadeth's attempt at radio singles, and it could work if it didn't feel so long and dragged out in the beginning, and if the lyrics didn't feel so forced, too. It kind of feels like some college kid at a coffee bar wrote these to prove to his girlfriend that he took a writing class once. It barely passed. Then again, people don't really listen to Megadeth for the deep lyrical content. I know that. It's for the music, and especially the guitar work. I don't know whether to be creeped out, embarrassed, or just start laughing at how bad this track is. It's like some cheesy villain wrote the lyrics to this, like if Skeletor started a band. Is he groaning? Oh, sweet mercy, get the microphone away from him. Lyrically, it's about as strong as the previous track. But while Insomnia at least had a good second half and hook near the end, this track just lacks a lot of punch. The guitar riffs are pretty standard, and at about 4.5 minutes, the song just flatlines, to be brought back up to more basic riffs and a guitar solo that would have any other Megadeth albums laughing at it. This is where the album really starts to become a chore to listen to. It's not grating and won't give you a headache, but it's boring. When you think thrash metal, and especially Megadeth, you don't think slow build and spoken word lyrics. There isn't much to say about the song at all because it has nothing to really talk about except some laughably embarrassing lyrics and music that's uninspiring. But it also has a sequence of Dave Mustaine groaning. I'm going to leave these timestamps here if you want to hear it again. Please feel free to leave a comment of what you think Dave Mustaine is actually doing while recording this. I'm excited and preemptively terrified of what your comments will be. You hear that? It's part of a 53-second track just to build up to another song in an arena-style anthem. If the payoff was worth it, then this could actually be pretty cool to lead into a really good track. But the payoff is something to behold.
Into the arena, and here's the light. Step up now, we're in for a ride.
Crush 'Em was the lead-off single that was meant to sell this album. This was the single promoted in media, in print, radio, and even having TV spots. They even made a deal in 1999 with WCW to have this song as Goldberg's entrance music, which went along with a full production music video as Goldberg being a high-tech soldier. This is the track that highlighted the direction that Megadeth wanted to go. This We Will Rock You-esque ballad to amp people up, even with a 53-second intro. But it's bland and it's boring. It's kind of like having to do your taxes when you know you won't get a refund. As soon as it starts, you just want it done. And when I say We Will Rock You-esque ballad, really listen to the chorus and think about how they were trying to get that same vibe. It's cheesy and boring, and obvious that Megadeth was trying to capture that We Will Rock You-esque vibe that Queen had, for example. And you remember that interview that Freddie Mercury had when he was laughing? Yeah, I just want to splice that into this music video for Crush 'Em. Aside from it being a bad amp-up song, it's just boring. It's slow and the volume doesn't pick up enough for the chorus, and it sounds like the band is just droning along. There is nothing to get behind. This song clocks in at almost 5 minutes and it's a bore. Hearing a studio audience chant of "Crush" with Mustaine's slowed down vocals being sung all adds to a huge misfire. Also think about the fact that this song was an entrance theme for a wrestler, one of the most famous wrestlers in the world at the time. That slow build and everything? Ugh. It's like a wrestler coming out to Hanson. That was dumb even for pro wrestling. Wow, that's a sentence I never thought I'd say. I can't believe this is Megadeth. I don't even think Megadeth fans would be able to defend any of this. Ugh, it's boring. It sounds like a bad 90s sitcom theme. Breadline starring Rob Schneider as the bread. I can't believe this song came from the same brains as albums like Rust in Peace and Peace Sells. What's even crazier is that Breadline even charted on Billboard. Ew! The guitar work sounds like it's the background track of an episode of MTV Real World. You know, the bland backtrack to break up the silence but not to distract from the, action? It's terrible! On top of that, the edge that Mustaine and Ellefson used in writing brutal tracks on war and government is now stripped down to a song about a bum. The hook is that awkward 90s cheese, and even rock radio at the time knew that there was stronger material than this to play, but somehow this song still charted. Mainly because the name Megadeth was attached. To be fair, Mustaine's vocals don't sound too bad. It actually has a little bit of a grunge flair, and he carries the melody well. But the lyrics and writing do not help him. Lower than a hemline. Even Vic Rattlehead would say that sucks, and he's deaf. I shouldn't feel this uncomfortable listening to an alt-rock album. This is what I was talking about, how the album is boring. There is some good guitar work after 4 minutes, but it's short-lived and it's dampened with Mustaine breaking the strong band rule of going na 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 na. The song plays like it's trying to be foreboding and give a sense of dread, but it's just exhausting to listen to. It's this long, drawn-out track about anticipating death, and now I feel like I'm closer to my own death after listening to it. Almost 6 minutes of drawn-out chords and basic drumming and bass. It's so drawn out. I know this is the sound they were going for, that alt-rock style, but it doesn't work that way. It's not engaging, it's just boring. And we bought it, because Megadeth was on the title. I want my $10 back. It's another lame attempt at 90s alt-rock. It's like that Breakfast at Tiffany's song. You know, the one where you start listening for 30 seconds and then you forget you're even listening to music, you just zone out. The drums are steady and have a few moments of elevation to add to the track, but that literally is all there is to get behind. Mustaine sounds like he's going through the motions and wanted to get out of the recording studio to hit up Happy Hour. Lyrically, it's the most generic song format that's already been done to death about being there for someone. There's nothing to hang on to. No guitar work that Megadeth built a legacy on except for that last few seconds during the fade-outs, no deep meaning, no intensity, and for the love of God, Mustaine needs to stop doing those speaking parts for a bridge because it's going to cause people to fall asleep faster than Ben Stein's voice in Ferris Bueller. I had that dream where I was falling again. This is the same band that did Holy Wars. They went from writing about religious beliefs and fighting to the death and relying on violence to chanting Judgment Day over and over again and just relating it to wanderlust. It's a shame because the last 2 minutes of this song are actually pretty strong. It feels like Mustaine is giving more delivery and the guitars are becoming more prominent along with some percussion. But in a track that's almost 5.5 minutes long, you would want more than 2 minutes of listenable material. This is the type of song that hurts because you can tell they at least had some idea about a direction, but they intentionally didn't continue with it. They wanted the slow sound with Mustaine's drawn-out singing throughout this entire album. You remember that foghorn sound I played earlier? I feel like I should just play that at the end of every track right now. Normally, if this was another band, I'd probably think this was funny, but this is from Megadeth, not some crappy after-work garage dad band. The cheese is really starting to get laid out now. The guitar work is a joke and is literally a strum-by-numbers rhythm with an added organ keys that don't add much at all. I honestly have no idea what they were going for on this track. Even calling it filler is a stretch because at least normal album filler doesn't make me feel ashamed that I listened to it afterward. Remember when I talked about Breadline and how it was a track just to put behind some roommate drama on MTV's Real World? Yeah, Ecstasy falls under that as well. It's bland and lazy and offers nothing. It's boring, it's exhausting, and I seriously could fall asleep just listening to it. Crap. I had that dream where Risk was the last thing Megadeth ever did. Repetitive snare drums. Good. Haven't had enough of that and regretting the past. In the song 7, it feels like Dave Mustaine is trying to get angry now. This would work if the music behind his voice matched. A church organ and snare drums go with this angry singing as well as that puppy monkey baby combination that made us all throw up during the Super Bowl. Oh, there's a good solo at 2 minutes in, but it doesn't last. It then just goes into a wannabe rockabilly style and then it hits you. This isn't Megadeth. If you played the second half of this song to someone who hadn't heard it, there is no way they would recognize it as one of the big four. This track changes direction several times and not one of them feels right. There isn't one direction that feels good. And no, I did not make that line just to make a One Direction joke. This song just sucks.
All the time, I'm running late.
Oh, gosh. The final two tracks with the front title Time have an interesting name because it really feels like time doesn't move when you listen to it. I swear listening to this track felt like I was doing homework. It's exhausting, and while short, doesn't even try to engage the listener. Hearing the drawn-out "Time waits for no one" lyric could put to sleep even the most hopped-up coffee addict. Crap. I had that dream where Lulu was the last thing Metallica ever did. Ew. Here in the second half of Time the End, the guitar work sounds refreshing. If the rest of the album had been done at this level, I don't think anyone would have made as much of an argument about Risk. The problem? It's not even 2.5 minutes long, and that includes over 10 seconds of a fade out. And then it ends, not with a bang, but with a sad shade of one of the best thrash metal bands trying to go mainstream to get more attention. But even if some of these songs somehow charted, it was so short-lived it didn't matter, and with the name Megadeth attached to it, people were left feeling burned because they thought they would get something heavier or at least something better than a wannabe anthem chant like Crush 'Em. To put it shortly, this entire album feels phoned in. All the talent and time in the world to make something, and Mustaine and company churned out track after track of glorified background music. In a way, it reminds me of Five Finger Death Punch's latest album, Got Your Six. Massive amounts of talent that was literally phoned in just to deliver something that they thought worked. And Mustaine thought Risk worked. Big time, in fact. Mustaine was even quoted saying, "If anyone else's name was on Risk, it would have sold." I have two problems with that. Number one, I think the only reason people paid attention to this lame album is because Megadeth was on the cover. Really think about it. If this album Risk was the exact same music and sound but from a no-name debut band on their first LP, it wouldn't have even gotten one radio single. It would have been panned and been cut as a loss for the record label. There are bands that play at bars that release better music than what we heard here, and their albums never get seen on the public level. The only reason Risk sold was because it was from Megadeth. And that leads to argument number 2 about Mustaine saying it didn't sell. Yeah, it sold. It went gold in the United States alone. Over 500,000 people bought this album. And why did we buy it? Because of the name on the cover. People will throw money at their favorite band before an album hits without even knowing what will be on the new album they purchase. They respect and love the band, so they hope for the best of the next chapter of that band's discography. Even today, with sites like Pledge Music and Indiegogo, we support bands on their next venture because we expect something good from musicians we like. This was back in 1999, and it still proves that point. People went to buy Risk because it was under the name Megadeth, and we all felt burned. I have never met one person who defended Risk as their favorite album, let alone their favorite from Megadeth. And for good reasons. It's boring, lazy, uninspiring, and exhausting. We are always going to support our favorite bands with our future albums, and we should. But when one of those albums comes out and it's terrible and we don't call it out, then we have a problem. We need to be vocal about what we love and what we dislike, even if it's by someone who helped shape a genre. I literally had hundreds of people request this album since last year. And I understand why. It's not up to the potential Megadeth could do, it's boring, and it's bland. It's not the worst thing I've ever heard, but it's definitely worth regretting in the history of metal, especially from one of the big four. Risk is not the worst thing I've ever heard by far, but it still burns that it was an attempt to reach the mainstream, and this is what the result is. You can't say that it was because Mustaine and company lost their touch, because even this year Megadeth released Dystopia, which many people enjoyed, and it definitely had that thrash metal edge and was engaging. Megadeth, just be Megadeth. And that goes for all other rock and metal bands too. Don't just try to be popular to get the mainstream and sell. Last time we had a rock band do that, we got the song Photograph. And we're all the worse for it. That being said, there's a lot more regret to come. And I'm setting up some goals for future Regretting the Past episodes. If you head to my Patreon page, I have some new goals. And on them are 3 albums for future Regretting the Past episodes. In fact, now that I look, I'm close on reaching one. Hey guys, thank you for watching. If you want to hear what I thought about Megadeth's most recent album, Dystopia, you can click on the YouTube card or the description link. Please check out my Patreon page. You can get rewards like getting to vote on upcoming album reviews and joining in on upcoming Q&As if you donate. You can follow Rocked on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and click on the annotation to see my last episode of Regretting the Past, and see why Hinder, his music only cut out for drunk moms looking to sing about bad relationships. Hey, do you like free stuff? Of course you do! Well, the good people at Channel Awesome, along with myself, are having a contest, and you could win a $50 Amazon credit for anything you want. The rules are simple. Once this video is posted to Channel Awesome on May 24th, just make any comment on that Channel Awesome page, and then subscribe to Rocked on YouTube. One lucky winner who does both of these will be contacted. The contest will be open from May 24th to May 30th, 2016. Please subscribe, make those comments stand out, and you can check out a lot more on music, movies, comics, video games, and everything else on ChannelAwesome.com.